everybody. Welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. I'm your host, Beth Pilgreen, and today we'll be talking about a critical part of any modern economy, and that's innovation. Innovation is that lightning in a bottle flash of inspiration, that one-of-a-kind inspired idea that can change everything, and it can be as elusive as it is remarkable. In an article for Digitent.com, entrepreneur Joe Dwyer set out to define innovation, and I think he came up with a pretty good one. His proposed definition is that innovation is the process of creating value by applying novel solutions to meaningful problems. Meaning, it has to be new, it has to fix a problem, and it has to create value. This intersection of invention, creativity, and commerce is why innovation is more than just a corporate buzzword. Innovation, quite literally, is the future of business. And our guest today is someone who is very familiar with innovation, Doug Buce. Doug is the founder and chief learning officer for Boing Dynamics, Inc. Did I get that right, Doug? Boing?
You got that right. Yeah, it's Boing. It doesn't have an E in there. That's the airplane company, so you nailed it.
Okay, wonderful. Just wanted to make sure. At Boing Dynamics, Doug has developed and facilitated leadership, presentation, team performance, and yes, innovation programs for a wide variety of companies. We're glad to have you here, Doug.
Well, thanks, Beth. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. So tell me a little bit about your background. Have you always been interested in sparking innovation?
Always. I don't know about that, but I have always liked unique, new ways of doing things. I've always liked energy and action, which is why I named my company Boing Dynamics. It's Boing like a bouncing ball, right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's got kinetic energy, or the energy of movement. It's not just sitting there. That's potential energy. And so it's the same thing with people, right? How do you turn potential energy in your workforce into kinetic energy and inspire them to take action to move when they need to? But before Boing, I actually cut my teeth in two very different industries. One super creative, one super conservative, but innovation came out in both. And the first part of my career actually was in promotions marketing. I was on a team that was coming up with cool, innovative ways to promote very standard products like Vlasic pickles, Chiquita bananas, Mentos mints, you know, the fresh maker. Yeah, that's great. It was fun. I mean, we had a great time and it was innovative, but there was a transition period where I actually started getting more into learning and development. Mm-hmm. And there was a multi-billion-dollar alternative investment company in Atlanta that was looking for someone to come in and really transform how training was done.
Wow.
But, you know, it was cool because we were being pioneers, pace setters, and I love that. So my short answer is I've always liked to drive exciting change, but I actually had to learn a lot about how to operationalize it.
Yeah. Well, you look at people like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, and those guys, we can all agree, are true innovators. And it is inspiring, Doug, but it can also be discouraging because people like that clearly think differently than most of us. In your opinion, is the ability to innovate something we're born with, or do you think it can be learned?
It's both. And I don't want to seem like I'm straddling the fence on this, but let me tell you why it's both. And this is one of the key things about innovation. There are these things that we call competing values or opposing values, and all are needed for innovation to actually get traction. Now, every single one of the people listening to this podcast has a value set or a perspective that's actually needed for innovation to occur. And that's the born with part that you talked about in that question. And you may say, yeah, but I'm not creative and risk-taking like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. I like safety. I like security. Well, that's actually great because that prudent, process-oriented mentality is actually key for innovation to take hold. You know, people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, their primary value is vision, right? It's not process, it's vision. But the thing is, we're all not going to be that way. And that's actually a good thing. So what you have to learn, so I'm trying to get to the learning part of your question, is that you do have a set of perspectives and values that add to the innovative process. Maybe your primary value is not vision, but whatever your value is, it adds to it. And there are these four competing values that actually play into each other in a wonderful, conflicting type of way. And so do you mind if I drill down on those?
No, please do.
Okay, so I'm a visual guy, so I want everybody, including you, Beth, to imagine a circle, okay? And we're going to cut that circle down the middle, top to bottom, and then also make a cut left to right. So we end up with four quadrants, okay, or pie pieces for those of you that like the food visuals. And by the way, everything I'm getting ready to describe to you, I learned from a wonderful guy who's basically the innovation guru at Michigan, Dr. Jeff DeGraff. I sat through his seminars. I've read his books. In fact, I hired him to work with my C-suite leadership team at that securities company. He's brilliant. Anyway, each quadrant in this circle is very different related to its values, how it views life and how it processes things. So let's start. Okay, so imagine the upper right-hand quadrant. Okay, so let's start with the quadrant where we'll put the Steve Jobs and the Elon Musks of the world.
Mhm.
Now, they're all about innovation and growth. They're all about doing things first. What can the future look like? What does it need that the average consumer doesn't even realize they need, right? I mean, they're risk takers. It's all, about go big or go home. They want to stand out, discovering new things. That my friend Jeff DeGraff, calls these people the artists. And by the way, like I said, their primary value is vision. Now go down to the opposite quadrant, so that lower left-hand part of the circle, because these are the people whose values are directly opposite from the artists. And only the tips of those pie pieces are touching, right? And we call these people in that lower left-hand quadrant the engineers.
Okay.
And they are polar opposite the artists. And artists drive engineers crazy. I mean, those artists are always coming up with new ideas and telling us how great they are. Now, here's the good thing about the engineers, those process-oriented people. Of the 20 or so ideas that us artists have at any given moment that we think are all great, by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, we'll forget about half of those, and the remaining 10.
Right.
Yeah, only 2 are really pretty good, but there is that one breakthrough thing, right? Of course, on the flip side, engineers drive artists crazy because they're thinking, what's wrong with these people? Why don't they get it? Why do they keep challenging me on the feasibility of this idea or whatever it is, right? Why do I have to use an Excel spreadsheet to describe my awesome creation?
Yeah, you're cramping my style, engineer.
You're cramping my style, man. So you see, engineers are all about doing things right. I mean, they love to master skills, set up procedures. They love to follow rules, create efficiency, do things right. And their primary value, again, is process. Now, here's the reality. And this is a glimpse of why competing values are wonderful in innovation. If you ask a typical artist to take a great idea and operationalize it in the organization, you're not going to get very far. And that's where many companies actually make a mistake, Beth, is because, it's like, let's let these creative folks just handle this. So the artist, who, by the way, has a lot of confidence, typically is thinking, well, this doesn't sound like a fun thing, but I can do this. And, I'll spend a whole day getting out an Excel spreadsheet and cranking out what it's going to take to actually operationalize this great idea. And then they hand it off to the engineers who have to actually build the systems to support it. And the engineers are thinking, you only did like 2% of what you were supposed to do, man. Artists bring the vision, the big idea. Engineers bring the process and the methodology to actually make it work. So I'm going to stop there. I've talked about 2 of the, now, Beth, I've only talked about 2 of these 4 competing values, but of the artist and the engineer descriptions, which do you think you are?
I was just smiling the whole time you were talking about these 2 because I can so relate. I think that I am right in the middle.
Oh, you can't straddle the fence on this one.
I know. Okay, so I actually technically am an artist, but I know that when I've worked on teams before, I don't have the big ideas, but I can implement other people's ideas because the idea people, like the visionaries is what I've always called them, or the artists in this quadrant example, they have this idea. And I've said in the past, like they just think in the clouds, they have an idea, but there's no legs to it. And so I would come up with the system behind it and the strategy behind it. I think I'm better at that.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, again, of the quadrants, those 2 are polar opposite. And so internally, I'm guessing you're a very stressed out person.
I am. How did you know? There's a lot of conflicting information going on in my brain at all times.
I understand. But okay, so let me describe the other 2 competing values. And maybe you'll find out, because here's the reality. You're not just all one. You are a little bit of all of them, but You've got usually a primary and a secondary. So my primary actually is a green. I just love new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. And I do think that all of my ideas are fantastic, right? And so I am that artist, but my secondary is what I'm getting ready to describe next. So go to the right lower hand quadrant mentally with this picture, and that is the zone that we call the athletes. Now, they're all about speed and profits. They want to do things fast. It's all about being the best, thriving under pressure, solving problems quickly, hitting the goals now, right? And some of these people probably leave like an organic wake of human remains behind them when they walk to the office going 12 miles an hour, got to get our steps in by noon. and because their primary value is goal. Now, their polar opposites are up in the upper left-hand quadrant of your circle in your mind. Their polar opposite quadrant consists of the ones that we call sages. And their purpose is about community. It's about knowledge. They want to do things that last. And you'll actually find a lot of human resources professionals in this quadrant. They're about building relationships, solving conflicts, learning and development. They want to encourage buy-in. And they love mentorship and things like empowerment. And their primary value is the values of the organization. So everybody listening to this podcast falls into one of these four quadrants, and each one brings its own needed perspectives, gifts, values to the innovative process. And again, you may have just a little bit of all of them, but you do have a primary driver. So real quickly, can I just give you a 1 minute high level on how these four work together?
I'm always going to say yes, please.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, so like we talked about, the artists, the Steve Jobs of the world, the Elon Musks of the world, the Dougs of the world, they bring vision and excitement about the innovation breakthrough. Now, the engineers bring process around that idea to actually give it traction. The athletes are going to drive the short-term goals to achieve the next big thing before the competitors do, right? And then those sages get people to get on board. And will there be conflict in the process? Absolutely, wonderfully, yes. But that ideological conflict, that debate is needed for innovation to actually happen. So again, whoever you are, whoever's listening to this, you add value.
Right. It really makes people consider who is on our team, and do we have all four parties represented on this pie that you just described in our team, because I think that that's very necessary to carry out ideas. But shifting gears a little bit, I would love to ask you your thoughts on disruption. We hear a lot about innovation, but we also hear a lot about disruption. Are they the same in your opinion, or is there any crossover?
Disruptive innovation is actually, I believe it's a subset of innovation. So let me add some context by, first of all, I'm going to define what innovation is from my standpoint. And you had a great definition contextually from, I think it was Joe Dwyer at the beginning during your introduction, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm going to borrow a definition from Marshall McLuhan, who is a professor at the University of Toronto. And I think he encapsulates it best, at least in my mind. There are four things that determine what is innovation. So first, innovation enhances something, right? I mean, an example is the World Wide Web. I mean, it enhanced worldwide connectivity. Second is that innovation eliminates or destroys something. And this is actually a key thing. I mean, it really isn't innovation if it doesn't replace the old whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Thirdly, it makes something simpler. And finally, and the fourth piece of this is over time, it reverses into its opposite, which is, it's a very fancy way of saying it becomes the old thing that now needs to be replaced. It was new at the time, but now it needs to be replaced. So that's the broad level definition of innovation. So let's kind of zoom down to what disruptive innovation is, at least in my mind. And that's usually a much more simple, low-grade solution for something that's more affordable and accessible to a larger population, which ultimately opens it up to an entirely new market. So I'll give you an example here in just a second.
Okay.
Disruptive innovations typically take hold at the bottom of a market, meeting the same needs as high market solutions, but just in a simpler, much cheaper way. Mm-hmm. And they're usually underrated at first and actually dismissed, but due to their low costs and advantages, they begin to move quickly up into the market, and eventually they become the appealing things that topple the behemoth competitors. And this disrupts the industry and traumatizes the established big dogs in the industry, right? So let me give you a quick example of this. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to give you one example of what disruption is, and then one that people think is, but is not. But first of all, one example of disruptive innovation is video streaming, right? Now, do you have a Netflix account?
I do. And Hulu, Amazon Prime. Yeah, I got all of them.
And did it start with Netflix?
Yes, it did.
Most of it did. Netflix has actually been around for 22 years.
What?
And yeah. And again, this is an example of disruptive innovation, because when it started out, It was out in California, and it was very much targeted to a very niche market. And that market was movie buffs who didn't care about new releases and didn't mind waiting a few days for DVDs to arrive in the mail, compared to the Blockbuster, which you can just hop in your car and then have exactly what you want to see that night, right? And so they had a different business model. But Netflix kept innovating its business model and distribution strategy, again, to keep things simple and cheap for their market. So in 2010 is when it went full on with video streaming, and it caught Blockbuster of course, completely by surprise. In fact, it was just 2 years earlier, I think in 2008, that the CEO of Blockbuster was being interviewed for an online investment platform company. And the CEO of Blockbuster said that they didn't even think about Netflix at all. They're not on the radar screen in terms of competition because they're just not that important. By the end of 2010, Blockbuster went bankrupt. So, that's a great example. Video streaming is something that is traumatizing in a disruptive way in industry. So real quick, Beth, I'm going to give you an example of one that people say is disruptive, but it's not really disruptive, at least with this definition.
Okay.
And that's Tesla. Again, we talked about Elon Musk earlier. Yeah. And again, he is phenomenally innovative, but the Tesla electric car is not disruptive innovation. And the reason is that it's not entering low-end, non-existent market segments. It's going after high-end customers that are still very much targeted and coveted by existing car makers. And in addition, of course, if you've ever priced out Teslas, the price points don't exactly make Teslas accessible to the overlooked and underserved markets.
Yeah, that's for sure.
While innovative, it's not disruptive innovation. Mm-hmm. Now, when electric cars, 10 years from now, you can get an electric car for $10,000 and on one charge, it'll go 1,000 miles. That will be disruptive.
There you go. We're all used to hearing about historical innovation, the aha moment of clarity, or the accidental innovation. But the truth is, most innovation doesn't come in a single moment or by accident. It comes from a lot of diligence and hard work. Can you speak into this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even the accidents in innovation starts with hard work on another initiative usually, right? And there's so many wonderful innovation accident examples, Play-Doh, penicillin, even the microwave oven. This is one of my favorite stories with regard to accidental innovation. I think it was 1946. A guy named Percy Spencer, who was an engineer at Raytheon, was actually working on a radar project. And Percy apparently liked his chocolate snacks, and so he would keep a chocolate bar in his pocket during the day. And while he was testing a new vacuum tube, actually, he realized that chocolate bar was melting at a much faster rate than it probably should. So he became intrigued and started pointing this vacuum tube at other objects, like eggs, popcorn kernels, and the eggs were popping and the popcorn was popping. And so he realized that the heat was probably experienced from microwave energy. And so Raytheon ultimately filed a patent for the first microwave. That first microwave, Beth, was 5.5 feet tall and weighed 750 pounds.
You're kidding.
It did not fit on the counters well at all.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay, so innovation is hard work for a variety of reasons. I mean, it takes intentionality of focus and thought. It takes getting the right players in the process, again, to what we were talking about earlier, who have these competing values. It's an iterative or prototyping process that requires a lot of effort over a short period of time. You're actually accelerating the failure rate to find that next big thing that works, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can be expensive, and it requires the energy and resolve to battle the status quo. And that's one of the biggest things that organizations have to battle is if you introduce innovation, you introduce change, even if it's innovative structural change with regard to how we report it to each other. You will always have a lot of people pushing back on that because we like the comfortable and predictability nature of the status quo, right?
Right.
And so it's getting people excited about that. And that takes a lot of energy and intentionality from leadership.
In the stories that you've shared, Doug, would you say that the foundational value in innovation would be curiosity? Like with what you just shared about the microwave, it seems like people were just very curious. And so they went forward in their curiosity and then brilliance happened.
Yeah, absolutely. The epicenters of innovation in an organization come from a variety of places. Now, the curiosity element is usually coming from how the company's value system is and just who they are as a company culturally. And I'll explain that in a second. But let me sidebar something real quick related to these 4 epicenters within an organization. The most typical area that innovation occurs in organizations is what we call customer-driven innovation, right? There's a market segment out there that we serve that says they need this, and there's nothing out there like this. And so we need to create this. And that's customer-driven. There's finance-driven innovation. And that's actually where our cost structure and how we're able to deliver something cheaper can benefit the customer. Therefore, we can scale it up to a much broader market. That's finance driven. There's resource driven, that you as an organization have a specific resource that you suddenly realize, hey, we can repackage it and monetize it and make it something really big. The fourth, and where I think the most exciting innovation, where it comes in an organization, is what we call values driven innovation. And this is where, again, the natural curiosity with regard to how do we express through our products, our services, who we are and what we're passionate about. A lot of that is values-oriented innovation. In fact, Apple, Steve Jobs, again, we keep talking about Steve Jobs, but Steve Jobs, he never innovated because of consumer-driven innovation. And again, he was brilliant. He was 4 steps ahead of anybody else in the room. But in his mind, the consumers don't know what the consumers need. And he does know what the consumers need. In fact, he is going to create something that the consumers haven't even thought of. It's not on the radar at all right now, but they're going to be so excited when it comes out that they're going to stand in line for 48 hours to get the first whatever it is, right?
Isn't that true?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I've never done that. Have you done that?
Never done that.
Oh,
no.
No.
I don't have the patience.
Work out the bugs before I get it, baby.
Exactly.
But Apple's value, their why. Simon Sinek calls it the why. What is your why behind your how and your what you do? But values driven is very much innovation from a curiosity standpoint of how can we reflect our why in our products and in our services. And at Apple, their why is in everything they do, they want to challenge the status quo and think uniquely. So that affects how they approach making phones, how they make computers, how they make their music platforms, whatever it is, right? And they're successful in all of those because they're not what driven, they're not product commoditized driven, they're driven by their value system. And most curiosity in organizations comes from that one of the 4 areas of epicenter.
It feels like some people are just thinking 100 miles faster than the rest of us.
Yeah, you're right. And that's great. We need them to, right?
We do, yeah. I mean, we all have our own gifts, and I love when they use theirs, and then we get this new technology in our hands.
Right. And to build off that, again, they'll come up with a big idea, but we need people like you that know how to actually operationalize something and put structure around it to actually give it traction. Otherwise, it's just a great idea, and then we see our competitor doing it 2 years from now, and we'll think, oh, we thought about that. We should have done it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are some of the things that can get in the way of someone tapping into their own innovative potential?
Oh, wow. On an individual level, it's what we talked about. It's that false internal narrative that I can't add value, right? I'm not creative enough. I can't do it. And again, we've debunked that. So that's it on an individual level. But on a corporate level, it's really not making innovation part of your culture. And, it really does have to be part of a growing company's culture. I mean, change or die is a cliche, but it's a true cliche, right?
Yeah.
And because the life cycles of anything you're doing, your current business model, your product line, your service delivery system, how you're structured, the life cycles of those, they're accelerating at an unprecedented rate right now because of technology, what the competition is doing, global connectedness. And change is going to happen whether you want it to or not. It's going to happen on your terms or somebody else's terms. So as a company, you have to be intentional about creating that next innovative change. Recently I was working with risk management for a Fortune 50 company here in Atlanta, and innovation was the topic. And risk management is like, man, that's going to be an exciting day, right? It was actually phenomenal. These guys were more creative than I am, but they told me that part of their culture was this concept, and this sounds really cool, Beth. You're going to want to write this down and use it at your next cocktail party. Concept is intentional creative destruction. Doesn't that sound cool? Intentional creative destruction.
Yes, tell me more.
Yeah, so the concept is that, your product, your service, business, whatever, when it really hits its stride, when it is rocking and rolling, that's when you already need to start thinking about the next big thing. Because again, change is going to happen on your terms or somebody else's terms. So intentional creative destruction puts the control in your hands. You are intentionally developing the next creative big thing that will make the current model obsolete. And you need to do it sooner than later, because that big thing that's rocking and rolling right now, that's making you money, again, what we talked about at the beginning of any innovative initiative, you're accelerating the failure rate, you're prototyping a lot, it can be expensive, and that existing older model needs to help fund this next big new thing.
That feels like your wheels are always spinning then. You can never rest, Doug.
It's not my fault.
That's just how innovation goes.
That's the way it goes.
Well, I know you do a lot of speaking engagements centered on a number of different topics, but you also do live in-person workshops, which you call fun shops. I'd love to hear more about your fun shops, specifically innovation acceleration. Yeah,
well, Beth, the idea of workshops, and I don't know if you're the same way, but that just kind of depresses me. Right?
The word work?
Work. Come on. And when I had to go to those, workshops at different times in my career, my first thought was, this is not going to be fun. So when I started this company, I decided that I wasn't going to deliver workshops. I would deliver fun shops, with great content, some actionable strategies, lots of energy, interaction. And most of these are around the areas of leadership, team performance, and like you said, innovation. So innovation acceleration It's about how to start gaining traction in the area of innovation, how to view it. Why is it necessary? How do you vet opportunity when the time comes? And what opportunities, again, may be sitting right in front of you that you need to identify? And the interesting thing actually is in these fun shops, sometimes those opportunities are not necessarily coming up with the next new big thing. With many of my clients, actually, what they discover is that the key to kickstarting innovation in their companies is to actually stop something old. Legacy processes, procedures, structures, that old status quo thing. We've always done it this way mentality. Those things can actually hold us back from innovation.
What are some of the results that you can share? Have companies reported more innovative thinking after your fun shops?
Beth, it would absolutely gut this podcast and my credibility if I said no, right? But luckily the answer is yes. And we've actually found that these concepts around innovation are not industry specific. In fact, I have one client that was $34 million company 2 years ago when they first engaged me. And we went through all of this stuff about innovation, business culture, and the leadership necessary to drive change and team performance. And we actually got into a rich discussion about their mission. And they went back and began to apply these things. And today, 2 years later, they're over $100 million company and were recently purchased by a multi-billion-dollar company. Now, I'm not going to say it's all because of what I did, but I think that's an example of how, the right knowledge, training, intentionality of focus, and excitement to change can yield great results.
I'm pretty sure that everyone listening right now if they weren't already very interested in your company, I'm sure all of their interests are piqued now. How can our listeners learn more about Boing Dynamics and your fun shops?
They can go to the website, which is Boing, is Boing, dynamics.com. Go to the website. There's a link to contact us and put in your information and we'll get back to you.
You got it. And for those of us who might not be able to take one of your fun shops in person, how can someone begin to tap into their innovative potential?
Wow. So first of all, just be intentional. Spend time to think and brainstorm. You have to make it part of your personal strategic initiative. Read. There's so many wonderful books out there. Again, Dr. Jeff DeGraff, the innovation guru at the University of Michigan, he's got some wonderful books like Making Stone Soup, and I believe one's called The Innovation Code. I'm sure you can find those on Amazon. And just remember, it's never too early to start learning about innovation because change or die is a true cliche. And again, you don't have to be Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. You just need to be a champion of the effort.
I love that. Thank you so much for all of this that you have taught us today on innovation. You've definitely opened my mind to new ways of thinking about it. But Doug, you can't leave without facing our lightning round questions.
Yeah, somebody warned me this was going to happen. So, all right, I'll give it my best. Is there a buzzer I need to push or anything, or is this?
Nope. You just have to answer, and I think that you're going to excel at all of these. This is this is the topic showdown.
Okay.
We've been talking about innovation, and in your opinion, who is more historically innovative, Thomas Edison or the Wright brothers?
Wow, right out of the blocks there. This is like asking me which of my kids I love more. It's not fair. Listen, I like everything that Edison did with electricity, and I like to fly. But I'll go with Thomas Edison. He had over 1,000 patents. Thomas Edison.
Okay. What's the worst job interview question you've ever been asked?
Do you need to use the restroom before we begin? That kind of let me know I was in for a long day.
That's great. What's your favorite thing about working in corporate learning?
The ripple effect. Just knowing that if you do it right, inspire these people to a higher level of emotion so they feel better when they leave and they're inspired to actually apply at least one new thing, that it's affecting so many people beyond the people that were actually in the session. So it's the ripple effect.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Don't buy that boat.
Great advice. Keep your money, don't buy the boat.
Yeah. That's probably not what you're looking for. Best advice actually was you can't be good at everything. Early in my career, I felt like I had to be great at everything. And so I would say yes to any opportunity that came up, but I was saying yes to everything because I thought I should be good at everything. And then, a wise mentor once said, you can't be good at everything. You've got some God-given strengths and you got some passions. You got to figure out where those things meet. And that's the area that you need to live in. And so when I was freed from the idea that I had to be good at everything, that was special.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I had a wise mentor tell me to stay in your lane, Beth. And once I learned that spreadsheets are not in my lane, I decided to stay away from them and to stay in mine. Doug, who inspires you or what inspires you?
Oh, wow. The people that inspire me are true, genuine level 5 leaders. And for anybody that's ever read anything by Jim Collins, or maybe you've heard, even if you didn't read, you've heard level 5 leadership, that's the highest level of leadership, right? It's those people that have that paradoxical blend of extreme personal humility and intense professional drive. And they elevate everybody's performance, and they set their organizations up for even better success when they leave. And it's not just about them. It really is about everybody else.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. And just so everybody knows who's listening, we are going to put all of these book references that he's given us into the episode companion so that you can find them for yourself or put them in your Amazon cart. And Doug, I just appreciate you joining us today on this week's episode of Project HR.
Well, thanks, Beth. This was fun. And did I get a prize, or did I win the lightning round?
You totally won. You were the only competitor, so by default, you are the winner, sir. And thanks to our listeners, of course. Don't forget to grab the companion for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. In it, you'll find notes, links, resources, and more. Also, if you'd like to be on Project HR or know someone who would, feel free to email us at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. Thanks to our new subscribers and to everyone who's been listening. We love getting your feedback. Don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. That's it from me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.